Welcome to the American Citizen Summit, where respected political leaders, grassroots visionaries, and other pioneers are charting the course toward a healthier political culture which expresses America's founding ideals of liberty, equality, and justice for all. Please share this event with your friends and family, and join us on Facebook at the Shift Network. And now your host, Stephen Dinan, CEO of the Shift Network.
Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome back to the American Citizen Summit. This is Stephen Dinan, one of the co-hosts of this summit and the founder and CEO of the Shift Network. And I'm really thrilled to be getting to facilitate and moderate this panel today with three very luminous ladies who are bringing compassion, spirituality, and politics together in very unique and inspiring ways. It's really part of, in my heart, that I've really been championing recently is that we need to bring our full selves into our political process, especially our spiritual selves, the heart and soul, because that is what is required to uplift our political discourse and really help us find higher solutions and more collaborative patterns of engaging each other. And we need to do it in very practical ways. And each of the three women that you're going to hear from on this panel has done that in remarkable ways, really blending the enlightenment practice and the enlightenment of our public process in really quite beautiful ways. So I'll share just really quick bios about each of them so we can dive into the content that they're here to share and really have a good interplay and back and forth. So first we have Marilyn Turkovich. She's the director of the Charter for Compassion International, which is an organization dedicated to facilitating work with cities committed to creating action plans to deal with issues that are of major concern. And this is actually close to 150 such cities in the U.S. and 350 globally. It's getting a lot of traction. Their website is charterforcompassion.org. Welcome, Marilyn.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Glad to be here.
Diane Musho Hamilton is a professional mediator and a teacher of Zen meditation, and all of her work is really concerned with creating harmony out of difference. She was the director of dispute resolution for the Utah State Judiciary, which led to interest in the work of Ken Wilber in developmental theory. She views her work in conflict resolution through a developmental lens, and she's at dianemushohamilton.com. Welcome, Diane.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Happy to be here.
And Sister Jenna, who I was delighted to see recently in Washington, D.C., is the founder of the Meditation Museums and also the host of the America Meditating radio show. And she was selected as one of the 100 most influential leaders of 2015 and served as a principal partner with the Oprah Winfrey Network and values partnership of the Oprah Winfrey Belief Team. So she's really also been doing interesting work of interviewing people in Washington, our representatives and senators, about their deeper spiritual life, which hoping that we can have some sort of partnership with Shift on that as well. So welcome, Sister Jenna.
Om Shanti, Stephen, and hello, everyone.
Oh, and I neglected to mention the big initiative this year is Meditate the Vote, which is at meditatethevote.com.
Thank you.
Great. Well, let's start, Marilyn, with you and talk about this marriage of what a lot of people think of as unlikely bedfellows, the compassion, spirituality, and politics. Since politics has turned into something of a blood sport in the United States, it often can be hard to envision a more compassionate and spiritually infused politics. But maybe talk a little bit about your history with this Charter of Compassion, how you're getting traction with cities in particular making a commitment to a different, to really a deeper level of serving from the heart, really. So I'd love to hear about your background and what's emerged there.
Well, my background is probably something that got me very much involved in this. I've been in education the majority of my life, and I think I cut my teeth in Chicago during the Civil Rights Movement when Martin Luther King was there, trying to really begin the process of integrating the city. So education and politics really kind of melded for me insofar as I was located on the west side of the city of Chicago, which was really not necessarily a melting pot as much as it was a ghetto. And during the initial years when I was there, I got myself so much involved in grassroots political organizing and education. It just all came together. And being a part of the charter has really been very significant in my life, and I think in the lives of most of the people who get involved with the charter. For people who might not know what it is, it really comes from the work of Karen Armstrong, who won the TED Prize, and her wish was to create a charter for compassion. And while it is a 360-some numbered document of words, in essence, it really is the golden rule that we bring back the idea of working with individuals, and that we treat everyone without exception with justice, equity, and respect. And that's what the charter is about, so that when we talk about it being a part of cities, the work of cities, what Karen Armstrong has suggested is that, a compassionate city is an uncomfortable city because it's willing to look at the problems that it faces. And, one of the things that is so key to what we do is to bring people together in dialogue. And for them in that dialogue to begin to look at not only who is at the table, but who isn't at the table, whose voices are missing, and to really work towards putting together a plan, a number of items that are issues that they want to work with and are committed to working with over a long-term period of time. And so those issues are everything from trying to bring about the end to homelessness and feeding the hungry, to really initiating dialogues on tensions, whatever that tension might be within a community.
Fantastic. Well, it's really inspiring work you're doing. Since we'll just kind of have a brief opening statement from each, and we can go on to Diane, maybe share a little bit common theme of dialogue and working across differences that is part of your background as well.
Yeah, well, I am, as you said earlier, Stephen, I am a meditator. I've been practicing Zen meditation for over 30 years, and I also am a mediator. So both meditation and mediation are fundamentally concerned with bringing two into one. So on the cushion, it could be your body, speech, and mind becoming one with the environment. And in a facilitated negotiation, you're bringing multiple parties into one way of making an agreement. So the process is really the same process. And, politics is basically a big negotiation process. It's never as elegant. There isn't a neutral the way there is in a mediation process. But one of the things that I appreciate about the political process, as unruly as it is, we are engaged in this process of coming to one. And so I think when I train mediators, one of the things I have to teach them is that the process of coming to unity is often filled with a lot of difficulty and challenge, most particularly in the body, because the sensations of diversity in the body are very different than the sensations of unity. And the same is true on the cushion, that we don't come to a unity of experience on the cushion without experiencing a lot of diversity and sometimes discomfort. So part of our work is to realize that diversity is part of unity, and how do we become better and better at working with it. So those are the things that are giving me a lot of passion these days.
It's great. I love that theme, that it's something that's also really echoed in my book tour that I've been doing is the theme of balancing unity and diversity, and holding both at the same time and honoring them is really key. Okay. Sister Jenna, how about you? A little bit of background and your current work and how it relates to compassion, spirituality, and politics.
Thank you. It's interesting that we're having this conversation where three of us, at least four of us on the call, we've been doing our work on the inside. And I have the fortune of having the backing of the Brahma Kumaris and an organization that's a nonprofit spiritual movement governed by the female principle for quite a number of years, and with 9,000 branches in 120 countries. For the last 30 years, I've been witnessing how our spaces have become places where, wherever we are located, individuals from all genres, all walks of life, all mindsets enter into those spaces and learn more about their ability to overcome their own limitations. And I have appreciated being a part of that journey for the last 30 years. And I always used to think that my story is slightly different, but I know that we're never alone in our path. We just need to find each other. But coming from a background of an Indian father and an African mother and raised in America, my mother being Catholic, my father being Hindu, I think that started my journey in something deeper. It started my journey in something deeper and wanting to see how we can elevate people's awareness. So being in Washington has been a very unique experience, to say the least, but quite inspiring because I have seen leaders in the political realm actually open up about a deeper part of their personality, the ones that we just don't see in the public eye. So I think what we offer is really our own selves, our spaces, and for sure, the changes that I've been going through, I've learned that the process that another person has to go through is pretty similar. So I think the development of how we have taught individuals, from the Brahma Kumaris and at the museums, I think the importance of leaning into what individuals are coming with, everyone, and listening to them clearly, I think really helps us to be able to offer what is the need at that particular time.
Well, let's look at this theme of unity and diversity. I think it's kind of an interesting jumping off point that Diane was bringing in there, that so much of the politics is dealing with sometimes very intense levels of diversity, very divergent viewpoints, and that there's a level at which it can be challenging oftentimes for people who are more spiritually oriented and like to have a more unitive, harmonious kind of field to then enter into a political arena, because it can feel very dissonant. And so I'm curious, maybe we can start with you, Marilyn, just the challenges of bringing a kind of a more unitive spirit, a kind of a softer, more open spirit into the political process, and whether that's sometimes been met with rejection or suspicion, or whether it's really it's been welcomed in different ways.
I'm not so sure how welcome it is, but I think that one of the problems that so many of our organizers face is one of a lack of civility in terms of people already having a fixed opinion even before the first words are spoken. And, I always find myself wanting to just kind of step back and ask the question about, what are the reasons that it appears to me that you're not listening to me, or, what is it that I should know about your perspective? And, are you curious about my perspective? And to begin, I think it's a back and forth pull, almost like pulling taffy, in ways of trying to get a dialogue going. And, so often, I remember years and years ago being with Carl Rogers, and, he said the fear sometimes for those who are in conflict is that there would be meaningful relationships built. And I think that that's what compassion is about in the work that we do, is that it's the promotion of the dialogue towards meaningful relationships that are really bound. And I know that the mention was just made about space, but that we move towards a more beloved community where we can have differences, but that we really have an openness to compassionate listening and to taking on the position of family within a beloved community, even though the differences might be so vast.
Diane, since you had the original theme brought up, and so often in politics, there's a spirit of combat that really makes it very hard for people to open to something softer and more connected, because when we're under attack, it's hard to be undefended in many ways. So, curious how you've seen what's really worked to kind of get people to drop their guard and open to a more of a collaborative dynamic when there's a lot of tensions getting played out.
Well, you've mentioned in my biography that I'm informed by a developmental lens, and I like to include evolutionary biology in my understanding of the challenge of diversity and diversity politics and difference that results in conflict. Because, in our evolution, sameness meant survival often, and difference was potential threat. And we were often more threatened by other human beings who were different than in our tribe than we were by other predators in nature. So we have a very sensitive nervous system when it comes to difference. And I think that including the body and including how powerful the sense of sameness and belonging is for our sense of safety is really important. So when we feel the same and we feel that we're safe, the brain is in a different state. As soon as we're so sensitive, as soon as we experience a difference, whether it's a difference in how someone looks, how someone speaks, what someone's values are, suddenly we might start having a little bit of an adrenaline starting to drip into the body. If that difference continues and we start to feel that something that we really value is at stake, that adrenaline is going to start increasing our heart rate. We're going to start feeling our palms sweat. We're going to start noticing ourselves getting ready to move. And so it's very important when we work with this that we really talk and include the very important difference in the embodied experience. So when I work with mediators, I often have them work in heightening difference and feeling what that's like, and then making moves to generate calmness and then feeling what that's like. So I think as we get more and more awake to our embodied processes and also how strongly we put boundaries around us and them, because nationalism is just a more elaborated form of tribalism, and how do we move to a globalism from a nationalism unless we understand how to cross those boundaries? So for me, that's sort of a beginning point, is working with the body and working with affirming kind of our history and our evolution, as opposed to imagine that we can create states of deep unity without really understanding, recognizing what the differences actually feel like and how much energy there is that can actually be captured with differences. So I like to affirm the difference and get to know it and then start looking for the sameness. That might be a way of saying it.
That's nice. That's nice. I kind of giving full permission to both sides of the equation in a way to first have people settle into that, and I like the evolutionary biology angle on that to see that, to make it more, to have more compassionate for the exaggerated reaction to differences as well.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
Sister Jenna. Yeah, so Sister Jenna, I know you're really a spirit of oneness is at the core of your work, and you really bring that into navigating all of political domains. And I'm curious, since you've been engaged now and starting to do dialogues and interviews with people on Capitol Hill about their spiritual practices, how are you able to kind of find your way into that softer, more unitive core that brings people together versus the standard political posturing?
I've been itching to speak. I have to tell you, it's so different for me because I guess it might be my own spiritual training or understanding of my own self. When I meet with a lot of these leaders on the Hill or at the White House or wherever they might be, I'm aware they have self-interest or personal, issues, and I'm aware that they might have compromised a lot of their conscience and a lot of issues that are maybe at their hearts, and they've had to close down their hearts. But that's not what I'm interested in. I'm really not interested in who's going to get what or how much they're going to get. When I'm there, I really feel, Stephen and everyone, like I'm an instrument. And I don't know how the energy of divinity will work when I'm there soul to soul with another child of the divine, and to see what wonders will emerge. And so I've been in D.C. now for 20 years, and ever since I came here, about 18, and I would say the last 16 years has just opened up relationships with leaders, because I don't want to see what their issues are. I know they're there, but I deeply believe that if I can get access at the deepest level of their subconscious, that part that is the good, the noble, the true act of service, why they entered that office in the first place, I know that that experience will shift some decision that they're making either that day or that week or that month or for the rest of their political lives. I've had so many have come to me in moments of deep, deep crisis of their conscience, just their conscience. And so when I look at the role that I play in terms of where politics is concerned, regardless of the party that you belong or who you decide to vote for or what have you, I feel that where we need to serve the political arena is to remember that beyond these individuals' positions and titles in our country, they are souls, and they do think, and they do have a conscience, and they did come from something that was very pristine and pure. And in an environment that perhaps isn't sustaining that truth, I feel that when we are in their company, we're in dialogue, and I ask them the right questions, I know as a fact something gets shifted in them. So for me, it's more like I've not bumped into anything challenging with the political leaders that I have been friends with or in service to. And this would be the same with you and everyone else. Like, I just don't want to focus on the negative right now. I think I've done that long enough in previous births or in many, many years before this, and I've seen where it got me, and I've seen where it's getting us by just dealing with everything at the same level that it was formed. So I just feel like having this language is just very different, and this practice it's very different, and speaking into the soul, like speaking into that being the way I want someone to access my subconscious and raise me up. That's been the way that my relationships, everyone, has been here on the Hill and in different forms of leadership, and it's been very unique, I have to tell you. It's been a game changer.
I love that, and I think that it's such a great example of like when you operate from a certain frequency, and then that's going to call people into it, and it takes people out of the whole mode that's been running things. Marilyn, have you also found that one thing that I'm just curious about the marriage of bringing that kind of higher frequency consciousness with the practical action focus that you also have with the Charter for Compassion?
Yes, I think that, there have been so many wonderful stories that have come out of the work of people, and maybe I should say, and be redundant, the work that they do together for another person oftentimes is that game changer. so that I can think of the people in Dallas, Fort Worth in the Compassionate Movement who have pledged together to package 1 million meals for hungry children locally and around the world. And I think that working for the other has been a real unity binder, and where people get to see into the essence of the other and to really alter their own perspective and perception about another person. And there's so many examples of people doing that with one another and for one another.
That's great.
Beautiful. How much of this do each of you think is, so there's, one of my theories is that we've had a hyper-masculine political process and climate, and so part of what's really needed is to bring the deeper feminine in, which includes a lot of the kind of modalities we're talking about, but it's almost like there's a culture that's about, it's kind of a tough culture. It's a kind of an attack culture and defend and compete, and it has lacked some of the more typically feminine qualities. And so we're in the process of gradually shifting that. And then part of bringing in more compassion and spirituality is also part of the bringing more of the feminine into the actual political culture so that it can be more in balance. I'd love for you to, since you're all three women and both obviously, I'd love to hear some of your reflections on that and what you see. It's also been, I've thought it's notable that several women that I've supported running for political office have been, it's taken a long time to undo the, in a way, the energetic hits and the psychic damage from just being in the race. Both comment it took like 6 months to really kind of unwind all of the ouch and it's almost like there's more of a more sensitivity sometimes in women's system to that kind of combative quality that happens in politics. And I'm just curious, so just some reflections, maybe we can start with you, Diane, just about bringing the feminine more into balance with the masculine in the political sphere.
Yeah, I think that's an important observation. The kind of history of warriorship and competitiveness and the qualities of receptive listening, of kind of nurturing, an availability, you might say, exposing your vulnerability. I think for someone like Hillary Clinton, who's a first generation major politician, first presidential nominee, she's often caught in this bind where people want her to exhibit a softer side of who she is, and yet I think she's endured precisely because she's able to she's very, very tough. And so I think that as we mature as a culture, and I trust that, over time we actually are doing that, we're capable of holding more, of seeing more perspectives, and realizing that we're better served when we do find ways to be present to one another and to really listen, to be able to let down our guard. But it does require getting over or outgrowing, if you will, the old habits of engagement that the political process has always had. I think if you look at Barack Obama, in some ways, he's more free to exhibit, at least in my mind, these qualities of receptivity and listening in some ways than a female candidate is. So it's a very important point that you're making.
Sister Jenna, anything you want to reflect on that?
Yeah, I would love to. Stephen, remember when we did Birth 2012 in LA, and you galvanized the world together, because of the shift that you knew would be happening. And we all know that when it comes on to consciousness, there really isn't a mechanism that can collect data that my thought made that happen, but we do trust that whatever we think vibrates, and vibrations do manifest in matter and create the realities that we're witnessing. So whether it's violence against, the color of your skin or your gender, or even the rhetoric that we're watching in the political arena at this time, it's something coming from consciousness, from thought. And what Birth 2012 did for me, it really woke me up to understanding that when you're birthing something, there's a lot of pain. And I feel that as we witness this political campaign and this president, this whole process has been so interesting for America. say the least. That, whatever will be the outcome of this campaign, it's got to be bringing forth something that we need to address or we need to prepare for, or we're going to have to just be stewards for, regardless of whatever it is. There's something stirring that we all are going to have to participate in and be responsible for. It will not be whoever is at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue only. It is the whole nation's responsibility to fix themselves individually and to find a vision that they feel supports a quality or a virtue that's very deep within the person's psyche. I started a campaign in May called Meditate the Vote, and it was all about raising the level of conversation. And I was at the White House recently, and I was sitting next to one of the most powerful African-American lawyers in the country, and I told him about the project. And one of the questions in Meditate the Vote campaign is, are you powerful enough to affect change? Immediately, he said, of course. And I said, are you powerful enough to sustain it? And he didn't answer. He pondered. And I think when we get into that level of thinking at that deeper level, like we're so quick at the answer, but deeply and truthfully, can I really do this? Can I really walk into a vision for this country and be that vision myself? Does that make sense? And so it's like I'm just communicating like there's just something that's coming forth, and whether it's a feminine form of leadership, I love Hillary Clinton, I love Donald Trump, I love all souls. I wouldn't necessarily say that Hillary Clinton is the most feminine energy that I have met and have engaged with, but I do know that it is there. So I think maybe the feminine energy are conversations like what we're having. It's this incorporation of thought and ideas that are asking important questions that will nurture our being so that we can come forth with a lot more clarity, perseverance, patience, and understanding, which I would say are more feminine qualities, especially in leadership.
Beautiful. Marilyn, any reflections from you on this?
Well, I think a number of different things come to mind. I think we can all agree that so many people are talking about the fact that there is going to be a whole new approach to dealing with things. And whether that's the feminine or a combination, I'd like to think that it is a combination. And that one of the things is that I'd like to really elevate the conversation. And, I find myself when I do watch the news always talking to the TV and asking the people that are being interviewed to, please don't get into the personalization of conflict between one person versus the other, but let's think of the bigger issues and, what's the difference that we want to make. And I think that's what people are talking about. What is this difference that we want, not only for our local politics and national politics, but, our position in the global arena. And, what are these things that are really sweeping about this change? And we can see them every day in what's happening in our cities and the events that, we're really being involved in. And, I think that what I'm hoping from this dialogue is that we get to a point about, what is our level of caring for the other? And that might be, the nurturing of the feminine, but I think that this is a really important question that we all have to deal with, as we're approaching this election. But more importantly, as Sister Jenna has said, is, what's to come after, and, what are the strengths and our gifts, our personal gifts that we're bringing to that action and that involvement in the future.
Fantastic. Well, let's talk about like the level of polarization in the culture. I mean, we're so polarized right now with between reds, between Democrats and Republicans, between 99% versus the 1%, between black and white. It's really an intense time of polarization. And just some thoughts on practices that we can take on that bring more compassion and spirituality into the process and healing, just on a personal level and also a community level. Let me circle back to Diane first on that.
Well, it's a tricky time for me, just because the expression of people's political passion is pretty extreme, and but what I try to do is I try to note that with that extremity comes a tremendous amount of energy, and that there's something in that energy that is like fuel for change. And that I like Sister Jenna's comment that whatever it is that's arising is all of our responsibility and something that we all get to somehow work with and attend to. So in my own circles, it has to do with actually working with discovering the underlying sameness. I mean, there's the sameness of our divine nature, or the absolute true nature of who we are, but there's also the sameness just in whatever it is. It's difficult for me to say right in this moment, but to actually look at Donald Trump's positions and try to find the way in which he and I are the same. And then when and not just in his essential nature, and not just in the fact that he gets up in the morning just like I do, but actually there's some part of me that wants to build a wall. There's some part of me that does want limits or wants boundaries. Is there sanity in wanting a limit or a boundary? Is there a way to frame it or talk about it that has legitimacy? Is there a way to actually find the sameness in our religious orientation, and then actually acknowledge some differences? Could I have that? Is there anything about making distinctions that actually has wisdom in it? So I would say that's kind of a personal practice that I work with, and also as a mediator, it's kind of essential that I really try to find some kernel of truth or wisdom in perspectives that at some level are just off-putting to me on a very basic level. So that would be one way I'm working with it.
Sister Jenna, how about you?
I like that, and I completely agree with what you're sharing, because, I can only speak for me and all the folks that come to me on a regular basis. I mean, this presidential race has us going deeper and asking really important questions that we perhaps just haven't visited for a long time. And being connected with so many cultures of people. I've heard people from America say, if so-and-so when I'm going to Costa Rica or Canada. I'm sure you've heard that too. And I've heard stuff like, America's going down, so I'm going to go back to my country. And ladies and Stephen, I lose all my yogiism at that moment. I just look at everyone and I go, so what, you were just using the country? Are you telling me that now that we're going through a hard time, this is when you check out? So then why are you here then? And maybe you do need to go. But what I feel is the country's asking something from us. It has educated me and my family. It has given my family a very fortunate lifestyle, and I've had the privilege to practice any kind of spirituality that I wish to without worrying if someone's going to attack me or tell me I can't say this or I can't wear my white robe around town and think I'm cute. I'm just going to say, no way. I don't believe that. And so this is where I'm feeling like, everyone, that we are being called now to not have we've taken so much from the land. You hear what I'm saying? We have received so much from everything that this country, the land, our forefathers have offered us. And now we are being called, what now can you offer in return to build this, to sustain this, to bring back the spirit of this country so it can continue to maintain one of its highest values, resilience.
Beautifully said. I love the spirit in your voice started to have some of the fierceness in there, and it just the next question just around.
You felt that passion, and where I just lose all my yogi energy.
Well, so there's sometimes we can think of compassion as very sweet and kind, but there's also can be a real fierceness in compassion, and many of the Eastern deities reflect that with Kali and Durga, and that there's can be a fierceness around stating truth, speaking truth to power, ending injustice. It can also be very compassionate. So I'd love to get your, Marilyn, circling back to you, just any reflections on when is it right action to be in that fierce compassion place, and when do we have to kind of check ourselves and do some other inner work to see about whether we're really in integrity with that?
Well, I think the inner work has to be there, or you're not going to be able to be as fierce as you need to be in order to confront the issues. And I think that in the beginning I said that one of the ways that we encourage people to come to the table to talk is to say, why is it that we live in this uncomfortable environment? And those are the issues that we need to get passionate about. And, the more that we work with those issues, the more that we hear the stories of people who are living those issues, the more fierce that we become, the more solid, I think, our action plan for, moving forward and making some changes. And, I'm reminded about what you were saying before about the feminine in politics. I'm not sure about what that's all about, but I know that too often, we are so prone to look towards a staid vision, that we have our eyes on a prize. And, we don't really look to understand, what the other perspectives are that are part of that, and what the other voices are that would make that change together. And I think that so often in politics we're looking to one person, a senator, a congressman, the president, and Sister Jenna, going back to something that she said, it's not who resides in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, but rather it's those coalitions that are out there and really respecting one another, listening to one another, and really getting their hands dirty with one another, and dealing with the turmoil in which, we all have a responsibility to remedy.
Diane, anything on fierce compassion?
Yeah, thank you, Marilyn, for that. Yeah, I think because I look through such a developmental lens at the political process and our engagement, and also our interpersonal and deep inner work, and it is true that from this perspective that it's an attribute of human development to be able to take more perspectives. So the more perspectives we can take, but it also implies more responsibility. Because when you're capable of seeing more, you're also then responsible for reflecting that ability to see more, and in listening to more perspectives. And I think sometimes that's the downside. And so we can take the perspectives of those people who are like us, but taking the perspective of somebody who's different, particularly when they don't appear to be able to take our perspective, that's where it gets really dicey. So I'm great as long as we can exchange perspectives, but if I can take yours but you can't take mine, and so for me, I think that little moment is where that responsibility comes in. So if we're capable of it, we have to embody it, and we have to use it and contribute it, as we've been saying. So
it's Sister Jenny here. I have to tell you, as you were speaking those words, I found myself asking the question that do I even know how to deal with myself when I have an idea or a feeling in my own consciousness which I don't even agree with? And how do I even shift that or embrace that or somehow deal with that? And I think why I'm mentioning this in our conversation is that all of these polarizing scenes and stories that we're witnessing, they're us. Mm-hmm. They're us. So when you've got the blue and the reds are going, you're like this and I'm like that, watch yourself. And how many times have you and I had opposite thoughts about a decision or a feeling that we have for ourselves or a person? And then what's the tool? What did I do to find my own reconciliation? You see, once we can find those tools and those answers, we can fix what we're witnessing outside of us or walk through that veil that we're hearing or seeing nowadays, very clear and unscathed by it because we've done our work on ourselves. Does that make sense, everyone?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, just a quick thing. So where that comes up for me in myself, and then also in the conversations that I have, political conversations with those people who don't see things the way I do, and am I actually able to stay present, open, available, and allow that perspective to enter and reflect it, even in the moment where I'm not going to receive that same quality of listening. So in the inner space, can I receive things I don't agree with in myself, and can I receive things that I don't agree with in others, particularly when when that isn't going to be reciprocated? So,
Marilyn, any response to that?
I don't think so. I think that I totally agree with everything that's been said, and I'm often reminded that one of my big responsibilities is to really zero in and to make certain that I'm listening. I don't always do it as well as I should, but to know that I have an obligation to work towards understanding another person's perspective.
Fantastic. Let's focus on action. So one of the things, Marilyn, you've really done a great job with the whole Charter for Compassion is putting compassion into action. Clear, it's not just the inner state or our relational fabric, but it's really about taking actions that really make compassion real. So let's talk a little bit about that marriage of what are the truly compassionate and spiritual actions to engage in the political realm that do make a difference from your perspective.
Well, I think that certainly one of the things that we've been working on is to really identify what are the ways and the processes that we could be using, especially during this time of elections, to promote dialogue. And it's been as basic as putting up a bench in some visible place in a community, and just to mark that bench as a listening bench, that people go there to express their opinion and to have a listening ear that would participate with them in a conversation. To I think of coming together with symposiums and hopefully working with the Bridge Alliance and others to promote workshops to really help people look at some of the deep issues that are of concern. And for the Charter, the biggest thing that we do is that we really believe in the other and in networking, and that we know that we can't go about something as individuals or maybe even as a community, but that it might take a lot more in the way of other organizations to help us in the kinds of experiences that we are really promoting. I was on a call earlier today, and a community that was having a great deal of problems in terms of violence, in terms of not really being able to communicate so easily with one another. And what they physically decided to do was to pull together 4 different quadrants, and first to have dialogue in each of those quadrants, and then move to, and these are, geographic quadrants, and then move and overlap the dialogue of bringing people from these various places within one city to dialogue with one another. So, it's constantly trying to get at the core and to get everyone's voice involved in the conversation that we possibly can. And then to obviously always have that invitation for others to join in dialogue.
Thank you. Diane, how about you?
Well, we focused a little bit in my own mind on the election, but I think the other thing that, of course, really activated and on my mind a lot right now are the conversations about race and about injustice that's going on. I spent a lot of my early years as a facilitator working on racial and ethnic fairness in the judiciary. We did an initiative that was about 5 years long, and I was part of many, many conversations related to race, to law enforcement, to the way in which people of color in this country are treated within the judicial system. And I guess I thought I was finished with that. And so I think part of what we need to remind ourselves in terms of our inner work and also our work in the world is that we do progress in terms of the spiral, and we do repeat, and we do have to return. And I think being willing to continue to encounter experience of threat or discomfort or difficulty just as part of the path is really important, and to realize that there's a certain way that it's never finished. Because I kind of imagined at this point we wouldn't be revisiting this, and we are, and that's just the way it is. So I think that willingness to keep opening the heart and returning to places that are difficult even when we've been there before.
Sister Jenna?
Well, that's what Meditative Vote was all about. The conversation where political leaders have pretty much brought the same items to the table, whether it's higher education, lower taxes, better health care, what have you, it's still on the table. And it amazes me that many of my brothers and sisters in the country are still buying into all of that. So obviously they haven't been cured for decades, and for presidents after presidents, we've not gotten what we want. So is the cure us? So is it that if I want better health care, then am I eating proper? Am I exercising? Am I breathing well? Am I having the right kinds of thoughts? Rather than leaving it up to an individual to say they're going to give me better health care, I vote them in, they have a wonderful 4 or 8 years, they don't do what I really wanted, then I argue and I it's just ridiculous. Like, come on, if you want something for your life, you must qualify yourself for that. And for us to ever allow a human being to be the source of our survival is slavery. It's just not right. So I think we're all being ushered into ourselves to find out if we're strong enough, if we're powerful enough, if we're worthy enough. Because we can no longer blame a government, blame a leader, blame our mothers, blame our fathers for anything. Now the question arises for all of us. Am I strong enough? I want to be healthier. I want to be intelligent enough where I can hold a good conversation if I want to. I want my money to be used in the right way. So what am I doing for that? And I think that this is what makes these times, everyone, so beautiful. As painful as it is to witness, it is so beautiful because if we don't get powerful, that's it. That's it. You can just say Om Shanti. Let's get off the planet. And nothing's going to fix this. So it feels like to me, everyone, we're given this golden chance to turn in the soul, turn inside of the soul, and to really find that power and strength that is sitting there dormant, because we've been waiting on somebody else or some magical thing outside of us to somehow stir it all together and make it what we want it to be, and we just show up without any effort. So it's a great time. So I think we're waking up, and we're going to get stronger, whether we want to or not.
Beautiful. Beautifully said. Good. Well, we just have a couple minutes left. Maybe just some closing, minute of closing thoughts or something from each of you would be great. And Marilyn?
Well, so much of what Sister Jenna was just saying reminded me of, how we don't talk about our responsibility as being a citizen, as being a steward of our world. And I think that, that's a good place for us to start. What is our responsibility? What are the small acts that we could do of compassion and kindness towards one another? What are the kind things that we can do for our neighbors? Because I think this all does start within our local community. And, how do we embrace the needs that we have as a community and voice those needs in a very positive way, but also in a way that says, hey, we're willing to take a stand for this. We're willing to roll up our sleeves so that as we approach our politicians, that we do this in communion, that, we're going to bring about change together.
Fantastic. Thank you. Sister Jenna?
Yes. I have a few words right now, and they are pause, listen to what you are thinking and feeling, and see if it connects to a universal truth, where you walk with the intention that what I'm about to say or do is beneficial for all. And I think that if we come from that tenet, we will start to shift the energy that we're living in right now, but amplify the energy that we will be walking into in the future, which is a future where everyone has enough, because everybody is enough within themselves.
Amen to that. That's beautiful. Diane, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. My heart is just full to be in the company of people that are so awake to the relationship of the inner to the outer, and so willing to work with themselves and to bring their heart into the political process. And so being given the opportunity to actually express my views and then to be heard and responded to is, in my mind, fulfilling this idea of what we're capable of. So I just want to thank everybody and thank those people who will be listening to this call, and Stephen for facilitating us and also asking us sincerely these really important questions.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you all just for the beauty and depth and wisdom that you've shared and the great heart. I feel like there's a lot of gems of insight and that are also applicable for our real actions that better our world. So it's clear that we need to up-level our politics to include our deepest knowing, our virtues, and our highest aspirations. And I think you've all done beautiful work to do that. So thank you for sharing some of your insights about how we can go still further, and let's keep the momentum to uplift our politics and really have it reflect the best in us. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank
Great.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Stephen. Bye.
Thank you for joining us for the American Citizen Summit, brought to you by the Shift Network. To add this powerful collection of teachings to your personal library, visit americancitizensummit.com/upgrade. To learn more about our global community of people evolving their consciousness and our culture, visit theshiftnetwork.com. Thank you again for joining us and for sharing this empowering wisdom with your friends and family.